Today, we're going to talk about something that, believe it or not, quietly shapes our cities and how much we pay for our homes. And no, it's not zoning or taxes, it's staircases. Yeah, staircases. And a new debate around them could seriously change the game for urban housing.
So, have you ever been walking through a pretty dense neighborhood and you see one of those small, kind of awkward, empty lots, and you just think to yourself, why hasn't anyone built anything there? I mean, it seems like such a huge waste of space, especially when we're in the middle of a housing crisis.
Well, it turns out the reason a lot of those lots just sit there, empty, often boils down to something most of us never even think about: staircases. I know, it sounds a little weird, but this one single design feature is having this massive, almost invisible impact on our housing supply.
To really get why, we need to dive into a specific and very old piece of the building code. Let's break down what's known as the two-staircase rule.
Okay, so the rule itself is pretty simple. For decades, the code has said that if an apartment building is more than 3 stories high, it has to have 2 separate emergency exits, 2 staircases. On the surface, that makes total sense. It's a safety measure, right? But it also comes with some huge, unforeseen consequences.
And this is where you can really see the problem. When you try to squeeze 2 staircases and the long hallway you need to connect them, architects call this a double-loaded corridor, onto a typical small city lot, you just lose a ton of space. The whole design becomes super inefficient, you have less room for actual apartments, and for a lot of these smaller or odd-shaped lots, it just makes building anything financially impossible. But with just one staircase, suddenly the layouts are way more flexible. You get more room for housing, and all those lots that nobody could build on before are back in the game.
This exact problem is what lawmakers in California are now trying to fix. They've got a new bill on the table that could totally change this decades-old rule.
Okay, so this proposal is called Assembly Bill 2252. It's being led by Assemblymember Alex Lee, and the idea is to update California's building code to allow single-stair buildings to go up to 6 stories high. That's double the current limit. The goal is super clear: unlock all those tricky properties and get more housing built, period.
And here's how the bill's sponsor, Assemblymember Lee, puts it. His point is that this isn't just some technical detail for architects to worry about. This is a rule that is actively deciding what our neighborhoods look and feel like, and frankly, how much housing even gets built in the first place.
Now, this whole thing might sound like a radical idea, but California isn't exactly going out on a limb here. This is actually part of a much bigger, nationwide movement to modernize our building codes for the 21st century. And you can really see the momentum building here. I mean, cities like New York and Seattle have had safe, taller, single-stair buildings for years. It's nothing new for them. Then, in 2025, you had 7 states pass their own reforms. And now, you've got heavy hitters like California and Washington, D.C. looking to get on board. This is moving past the experiment phase and becoming the new standard.
And just look at some of the places that have already made the switch. We're talking states all over the map, from Colorado to New Hampshire. Dallas, Texas went even further. They allow single-stair buildings up to 8 stories. And right there in California, Culver City already went ahead and became the first city in the state to do it.
Of course, a change this big doesn't happen without a serious debate, and this one really boils down to 2 huge concerns: housing affordability versus public safety. Let's take a look at both sides of the argument.
So, on the affordability side, the numbers are pretty compelling. An analysis from the Pew Research Center found that just by getting rid of that second staircase, you could cut overall construction costs by anywhere from 6 to 13%. I mean, in a world where construction costs are through the roof, that is a huge savings that could make a lot more housing projects actually pencil out.
But that, of course, brings us to the big question. The one that critics of this reform always bring up, and for good reason. If you only have one way out, is the building actually safe in a fire?
To answer that, supporters point to the data from cities where these buildings are already common. Pew looked at New York City and Seattle and found that, thanks to modern fire safety tech like sprinklers, the fatality rates are basically the same as in buildings with 2 stairs. And their conclusion was really striking. Over a 12-year period, having a second staircase wouldn't have actually prevented the fire deaths that did happen.
Still, critics and a lot of building safety officials are urging caution here. They argue that as we build denser and denser housing, things like how fast you can evacuate and making sure buildings are accessible for everyone, including people with disabilities, have to be the absolute #1 priority. And they just want to be sure those standards aren't being compromised.
So, when you put it all together, what could this one seemingly small tweak to the building code really mean for our cities? Well, proponents argue it could set off a really powerful domino effect.
The logic from supporters pretty much goes like this.
First, you reform the code. That immediately unlocks all those small, overlooked city lots. Then, developers can actually build more of what's called missing middle housing. Small to mid-size apartment buildings. And the final domino to fall? An increased housing supply, which, at least in theory, should help make things more affordable for everyone.
And that really leaves us with the central question here. We're trying to balance historical safety rules against modern technology and a desperate need for more homes. So could this one simple change to how we think about staircases really be a key to unlocking the future of our cities?